meeting today, and the name of the speech is Writing for the Wastebasket.
The great man rose from his chair and walked to the podium. Hundreds of ears ready to absorb every word. After all, this was the man who had led England and the world in defeating the Nazi threat during World War II. This freshly minted group of college graduates about to receive the advice and the wisdom of no less than Sir Winston Churchill. The eager audience waited as Churchill walked up to the microphone and he began, "Never give up. Never, 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 never give up." And then he sat back down. Now you can imagine that the audience was taken aback, perhaps feeling a little disappointed at the 10-word pronouncement of the Prime Minister, but Churchill was by no means being facetious. He, in fact, had taught everyone in that moment the foundation for his plan in leading England in the defeat of the Nazis. Never give up. Never quit. Never surrender. Now, I like to take that attitude of tenacity and put it in the phrase patience and persistence. That's a phrase I've used with hundreds of homeowners who have been trying to save their homes from foreclosure as I've counseled them through my job over the last few years. And I have seen dozens of cases where that attitude of patience and persistence, never giving up, has made all the difference, and those people have saved their homes. But my favorite story when it comes to never giving up and the success that comes from it actually is a story about one of the contributors to the Great American Songbook, the legendary songwriter Johnny Mercer. Just a few months before Mercer passed away in 1976, he visited a small recording studio in Nashville. He'd been hired to consult on a project the studio was doing. And you can imagine, the studio was, everyone there was very, very anxious to meet Johnny Mercer, to have the chance to work with him, this legendary lyricist and composer who had written over 1,500 songs. More than half of them had been published. He'd worked with all the greats, Pokey Carmichael, Cole Porter, worked with Henry Mancini, George Gershwin, all of the greats. Those songs also bore the name of Johnny Mercer as the lyricist. But there was one person on the staff who in particular wanted to meet Johnny Mercer. This young man was a songwriter, although he was working there in the studio as a recording engineer. It turned out, though, that he'd written and recorded a song that had become the theme song for a television show. The song had actually been released as a single. It had become a top 10 hit. When it happened, the young man thought, that's it. I've made it. I'm a successful singer-songwriter. My career's made. That's it. It's fixed. Only it didn't quite turn out that way. There was never a follow-up to that hit. Over the next couple of years, it became very obvious that he was going to join that rather embarrassing fraternity of the one-hit wonder. Well, as Mercer arrived and all the hubbub ensued, the young man waited patiently. When he got his chance, he managed to get Johnny Mercer aside for a moment, explained what had happened, and said, "Mr. Mercer, you're one of the legends. How did you do it? What's your secret?" And Mercer hesitated. He smiled a little bit, and he said, "You really want to know my secret? Okay. I write for the wastebasket." Now, obviously, the young man was scratching his head at hearing that, but fortunately, Mercer went on and he said, "You see, when I sit down to write, I write everything that comes to mind. Everything, every word, every phrase, every period, every comma, every punctuation mark, until I get it all down on paper. Now I do that knowing that 95% of that belongs in the wastebasket. There's a really good thing that comes from that, though, one of the things that happens is you develop a great hook shot. But the other great thing, even better thing, is that 5% that's left over, that's pure gold. Now, unfortunately, the young man who asked for Mercer's advice apparently didn't take it, because we never heard from him. But fast forward about 20 years, the attic of Johnny Mercer's home in Southern California. His widow is finally getting around after 2 decades of being without her husband, cleaning out the attic. She opened up the trunk, and inside were the knickknacks, the memorabilia, the trinkets, the treasures from that songwriting career. But in the midst of it all, there was a manila envelope stuffed full of bits of paper. She picked it up, opened it, pulled out one of the bits of paper, and immediately recognized Johnny's handwriting. But what was on there wasn't familiar to her. She pulled out another one, and as she went through them, she realized what she had discovered. These were unfinished song lyrics. She realized that she'd come across an envelope of pure musical gold. And she knew just simply from her husband's legacy, if nothing else, that these songs had to be finished. But who could she turn them over to? Most of her husband's contemporaries had either retired or had passed away themselves. So who would be available to finish these songs? She thought of several names. Neil Diamond came to mind, but that didn't quite seem to fit. Eventually, the name Barry Manilow popped into her mind. She realized this was probably the person to take care of this task. She gave the lyrics to Manilow, who was thrilled, and he sat down to write. Manilow created a handful of new songs from those lyrics, including one called When October Goes. This particular song was not only recorded by Manilow, but it was introduced to the world by Johnny Mercer's good friend, Rosemary Clooney, during a special concert to celebrate her own 50th anniversary in show business. A whole new group of songs have been added to the Great American Song. It doesn't matter if you're trying to write great songs. It doesn't matter if you're trying to defeat a source of evil in the world. It doesn't matter if you're trying to save your own home. No matter what that task might be, whether it might be that seemingly insurmountable task to many new Toastmasters, reaching that DTM, the plan remains the same. Never surrender. Never quit. Never